Hey, what's up, fellas? My luscious female fans, Steve Alicious here. And I know you don't know me that well just yet. It's been only a few videos, but take it from Uncle Steve. I've used quite a few devices in my day, from back in the day when it was more PDAs to when cell phones became more viable. Everybody has a different hobby. Everybody wastes their money differently, whether it's skiing, some people weed, whatever it is. I happen to like electronics. And for whatever reason, this particular device, the Razer Phone 2, has stuck with me. I've used newer phones, I've used older phones, I've used phones with way more features than this, with better design than this, but I keep going back to this device. But the question is it worth your money in 2020? Depends on what you pay. And I know I ruined my own video by saying that, but stay tuned for the personality. We'll be right back. And welcome back, Razer Phone 2. Before we even start, I want to say thank you guys for 40 subscribers. It was really cool to wake up to that notification the other day. If you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and tussle that subscribe button. Really helps me. It makes me feel good on the inside. So thank you for that. So now, Razer Phone 2. I'm torn with a lot of what's going on with this phone. We'll talk about the screen, because that's, I think, the majority of what people focus on when they talk about the Razer Phone 2, and then we'll talk about the viability of it in 2020. We also have Leopard Spot Pusheen helping out. If you know about Pusheen, then you know. If you don't know about Pusheen, you probably shouldn't be on this channel. Anyway, Razer Phone 2. Let's flip it over so we can actually see the RGB function. Now, the confusing part about this phone is that you will see a lot of the major features, or a lot of keystone features of a 2020 flagship phone on this phone that came out in 2018. Now, the RGB on the back is fancy. It's nice. It's on some of the, I don't want to say cheaper game phones, but the phones that are focused solely on gaming and looking like they're about gaming. But I happen to like this particular implementation of the RGB logo on the back because it has a bunch of different settings in the Chroma app, which is similar to the Chroma app that you get on your Razer products, on your computer, your PC, mouse, keyboard, headset, whatever it happens to be. But this particular one can be programmed to notifications. So if you have it face down on a table like this and X notification comes in, you have it linked to a color, bam, that color comes up on the back of the device. Really cool feature. You could also have different settings where you can only have it pulse for notifications. You could have it only be active when you have the phone unlocked and you're using it, or for the purposes of this review, because I don't really care if we roast the battery or not, you can have it where it's just on all the time, whether the screen is on or not. So, speaking of screen, what do you hear on every single phone review on 2020? The refresh rate of the screen. Okay? And now, I understand. People are going to say, oh, it's an IPS panel. But that was back when this phone came out. That's what you could do with an IPS panel. 120 hertz display. And I know you're going to hear it on every single video review you hear, or every single phone review you hear of a screen that has a higher than 60 hertz refresh rate. Yes, you can feel it. Yes, it is noticeable. Yes, it is worth it. And that's what I was telling you about in my intro. I use a bunch of other devices. I use newer devices. Galaxy Note 10 Plus is actually my daily driver along with an iPhone. Okay? 60 hertz refresh rates. At night, when I'm watching videos and content and just like a phone to play games on and scroll through stuff, I'm using this without a SIM card in it. It's just so smooth and so nice. And everyone's going to sit there and it's like, well, yeah, but I can get 120 hertz OLED now that has better colors. And yeah, you can. But we'll talk about price in a minute. But I understand, I'm even looking at it from an angle because I'm kind of sitting down in reference to the table as I do the review. And you can see the blacks aren't black. They're kind of, there's a gray, there's light bleed on IPS panels. But it is a 2K display. It is nice. I mean, if you put it side by side with an OLED device, yeah, you're going to notice a difference. But you're not doing that. It's enough where you're sitting there watching videos, you're looking at content, you understand that this is bluish. Okay, this is blue. This doesn't look like this. You know, when people talk about the integrity of the colors and the color accuracy on the screens, I think we get a little carried away. It's enough, and it's a good enough and a high quality enough screen that you know what you're doing. I don't think you're getting robbed here. So I think that's a selling point for sure. And I happen to like it as well. Now, the design itself, fingerprint magnet on the back, big giant slab, but you do get wireless charging, which you did not get on the Razer Phone 1, which is kind of cool. So you get wireless charging on this one, and the relatively same design with the speakers here. Now, for a gaming phone, I do not mind that. I do not mind the fact that it has a giant forehead and a giant chin. I understand that the speakers are not the best in the world, and you're expecting, well, if you have these huge speaker grills, probably should be really good speakers, and they're decent enough. But I like on a gaming phone that you got something to hold on to here, where your hand isn't basically blocking the screen, and then your thumbs are fighting for even more real estate on the screen. You're able to hold it like this comfortably, and your thumbs kind of do their business. And we'll get to this device over here in a second, the Jungle Cat, which kind of alleviates that sort of. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the screen itself, overall, I think it's a plus, not a minus. Granted, IPS, but we're going to talk about price. The 120 hertz is nice. And you're looking at phones like the Pixel 4, 90 hertz sometimes, unless you turn it off and you risk your battery life. Some of these devices only 90 hertz, 120 now on the Samsung, and on the high-end OnePlus 8T Pro, whatever they're calling it now. So you get that. But this phone, 2018, had the 120 hertz refresh rate. The other cool thing for games is, and there's a reason why I play it on the games, is the Cortex app, which I understand is annoying for some people because you have to use it for certain things. But what I do like is that it's updated, even though it's an older device. It's updated, and it gives you 120 hertz games, right? So right now, we've got a Final Fantasy mobile game here that's 120 hertz. You got Overdocks, 120 hertz. Armajet, which has been on there for a while. Skull, like, it gives you updates of different games that are 120 hertz, which I think is quite nice. And the app itself is awesome because I know when I first got it, I was daily driving it a bit. I had a SIM card in it, and I was playing a lot of Pokemon Go. We were still able to go outside. And the problem was I couldn't hit any of my throws. Any at all. No curveballs, no nothing. And it was really frustrating to me until I figured out it's because of the 120 hertz display. So what you can do, which is awesome, is if your particular game isn't formatted for it, doesn't utilize it, or it screws up the timing of your game, you could go in, like let's say Cat Cafe, okay? I don't need 120 FPS for Cat Cafe, so I can knock that down. We could go 120 frames, we could go 60, we could go 90, and then that particular game will run at that particular resolution or speed. What's nice, if it's not an intensive game, like Cat Cafe is not particularly intensive, we could down the processor speed, keep it cool. We could down the resolution, save on battery life, right? So there's some useful stuff in here that you can use to make sure that you get the most battery life, because it is not a battery beast. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I keep it at full resolution, 120 hertz, all day, every day. And I understand that that kills battery life, but for me, it's worth it because you get it for those killer those killer apps like the 120 hertz. So for me, it's worth it. So I keep it on the full display. 8 gigs of RAM, which at the time was a bigger deal than it is now, but it's very nice. Very capable Snapdragon 845, and we'll talk about the Snapdragon because they haven't mentioned anything about. They said that their engineers were looking at whether it can support Android 10, and this, along with the price, is the second biggest sticking point that I would have in recommending this device in 2020, in May 2020 specifically. They said their engineers are going to look at it, whether it can support it. It can support it. There are devices with the Snapdragon 845 and 8 gigs of RAM getting Android 10. It's a matter of whether they want to do it or not. The Pixel 2 has an 835 and it got Android 10. I understand stock Android and they have to do whatever they have to do. Now, they're still getting security updates, and they are promising security updates for the device, which is nice. But Android 9 is perfectly usable for me. I don't think it's going to be obsolete for another couple of years, at least for apps, right? They're going to have legacy devices they have to support. And the cool thing about this is it's still perfectly viable for games. And it makes sense that it's viable for games. Because this is a Snapdragon 845, which was the flagship chip 2 years ago. But not everybody's running on a 845 or the flagship chip. You got people running on the 670 still, on the 710, whatever those mid-range, mid-power chips they have. And if you are, as a mobile developer, as a game developer, say, okay, well, I'm only going to program my device to work on the tippity-top devices, you're limiting your market, right? If you have a mid-tier, mid-range device that you paid X amount of dollars for, you're not going to download that game. It's going to run like crap. So that developer's limiting their market share. So of course they're going to optimize games to work on it. I was running PUBG on this the other day, perfectly fine. I run COD Mobile on this, perfectly fine. And I think it's going to be viable for games for at least a couple years to come. So that goes in the positives. Also, Razer, I don't know whether it's out of guilt or because they refuse to admit that they messed up, they still make their latest accessories for it. We'll talk about the Jungle Cat. This came out last year. This works really well. Okay, I'll bring it up to the camera, you can see it. This works really well. It's low latency, just like they said it would be. The problem is, unless you're playing Fortnite or some other games that aren't going to ban you for using an overlay, that's a problem. You can literally, with COD Mobile, use a PS4 Xbox controller, but you can't use this because it has an overlay that it uses that it maps the buttons on the screen. Same thing with PUBG. So, good peripheral accessory device to go with it, but if you're looking for COD Mobile and PUBG for this particular device, don't get the Jungle Cat yet. Don't get the Jungle Cat yet. If you play primarily Fortnite, I feel bad for you as a person, but this will work just fine. The other major thing that I think is the cases, right? So this case just came out. This is a relatively new case. You'll see it on the iPhones. In fact, they don't even have it on the end on their Samsung offerings yet. For Samsung yet, just came out. Supports this. Okay? iPhone 11 and this are the ones that get this case. So I think some of that stuff's pretty cool. They also have some wireless accessories. They had a wireless charger that sold out in 37 minutes. And like all other Razer stuff, whenever they stop making it, it goes up on eBay for however many hundreds of dollars. And the phone's supported by this. S10 Plus, Note 9, and this. So I think there's still enough support for it that would make it worth it. Now, here's the problem. Just getting back to that, the 845, the Snapdragon 840, Google Stadia, for what that's worth, for the last 3 minutes of their life, ran on this. And the other thing I like a lot is, like, unlike other phones, when you watch content, let's mute this, just whoever, it fills the entire screen. See this? No black bars, no cropping, no nothing. It's a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is quite nice. Now, price. The reason why I did this video in the first place, I was thinking about doing this video last week, is the last time I saw this for sale retail, it was $300, $299. I was impressed. I had happened to pick this up a few months after launch, which I thought was a steal, for $499. Then it was available for $299, brand new. It's like, absolutely, like I said, some of the features that you see in 2020 were on this phone. So for $299, if you're in the market for one of these, that's a steal. Now, not available anymore. The only ones I see new are the ones that are leftover or old stock, and they're trying to sell those for $700, and that's very much not worth it. Because you can get any number of devices, those Xiaomi devices, even the OnePlus 8, just the regular one, not the Pro, that are worth $700 well before this one is. If you're okay with the used market, you could get a pretty decent example for like $200 on eBay. And if you're looking at it, if you have an iPhone and you're looking for like a secondary gaming device or just a second device in general that you're looking to have some fun with, you're looking to learn on Android, this is a great way to do it for $200. You'll get a nice little experience here for that kind of money. And if you could find it new somewhere, if a retailer still has it for the $300, pick it up. Pick it up. That would be my recommendation. But if you're looking to pay more than that, anything under $300, you're good to go. $300 to $400 range. Viewer discretion advised. Anything over $400, let this one be in the past for you. And move on from there. If you've made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. If you had one of these, if you have one, if you're still using it, all that stuff, don't go around and be taking pictures with it. It's not a picture-taking device. This is for the hardcore gamer. Let me know in the comment section below. Until next time, have that Steve-licious day. Stay tuned for the personality. We'll be right back.